The only drawback about these is that when you drive at night, any red lights or any lights look like big starbursts. They're not so great for night driving.
Oh,
Sometimes
that would be a
will go
downside.
away sometimes it goes away after a time.
Oh, good. That'll be good.
Especially during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, everybody.
Martin. Morning.
Hi, Martin.
Afternoon.
Morning, Ron.
So is everybody still experiencing a heat wave over there?
Yep.
It's incredible here. The rivers are so low.
Yeah, it's not good.
Nope. I was just down with the hatchery people. They're just pulling fish out of the river, but there was several species, so they're all still there. But yeah, the water's getting real low.
Good afternoon, directors.
Morning.
Mark, it might be morning where you are, but it's afternoon where I am.
Good afternoon, good
I
afternoon.
have confirmation of a quorum, and I have directors Cornfield and Colburn, staff here, and one, what do we call him, a candidate? Candidate Mark Dahl from Quad Island is here in the audience, so welcome. So I'll call the meeting to order. The first business is the chair will acknowledge that we are here meeting on the traditional territory of the Lakota people. And I'll ask for adoption of the public agenda, please.
Move to adopt.
Adoption.
Baker and Davis, I believe. Any additions? Seeing none, call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. There are no petitions and allegations. Can I have adoption of the minutes for the September 21st meeting, please?
So moved, Colburn.
Second.
Colburn and Cornfield. Any errors, omissions? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Any business arising from the minutes? No public considerations? No notice of motion? Chair report, I just got a couple quick things. And Director Evans just walked in. Just a quick thing on Director Abram article in the paper, just to put it out to everybody and everybody understand. In connection with the board's recent director's audit report, it concluded with a resolution from Director Abram that he would pay back the $86.40 in meeting claims in hopes that he would be put an end to the issue. Director Abram participated in a news article which was ran in the Bird's Eye with some quotes in it. That there was some of those quotes included this was a complete miscarriage of justice, resulted from a reinterpretation by our CEO and a bylaw. Every claim was legitimate. As we all know, initial review from this item was done by corporate staff, followed by a review of the board, subcommittee of Vice Chair Mulglove and myself, Director Abram. We went through all the claims. At the end of the day, 57 claims had been previously paid that were not compensatable. Statements made in the article by Director Abram after the board meeting were false and misleading to the public. And Director Abram has subsequently now placed an ad in the October 5th edition of the Bird's Eye retracting his statements with apologizing to both the board and the CAO. The only other thing I want to add on Chair's report, as we know, well, actually, no, we do have one more meeting after the election. So the election is in 2 days. Those that are running, I wish you luck. Those that got acclaimed, you're lucky people. And those that aren't running, you're probably even luckier. That's my Chair's report for now.
Move receipt.
Second, Colburn.
Moved in second, thank you. Call questions, anyone opposed? Carried. First item, committee chair report, Electoral Area Service Committee, that the draft minutes for the regular meeting for September 21st be received.
Move
receipt,
receipt,
Anderson.
Abram.
Abram,
Second.
Abram and Wally, I believe. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 2, Strathcona Gardens Commission, draft minutes for the regular meeting for September 21st be received.
Move receipt. Lee.
Lee and Evans, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Staff reports. First item, subdivision frontage relief, April Point Development. Motion to receive the report from
Move
the
receipt,
CEO.
Abram.
Second, Colburn.
Abram and Colburn, and I'll go to the CEO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Nothing to add. So on receipt, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. And item B, in accordance with
Move
section.
item B, Abram.
Abram.
Second.
And Wally seconded. Any discussion? See none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 2, noise control service, electoral area. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
Move receipt.
Wally
Second, Colburn.
and Colburn, and I'll go CEO.
Nothing to add on that, Mr. Chair.
On receipt, I'll call Director Anderson.
Thank you. I thought that the intention of this noise bylaw was essentially to get at canons of some sort, one very specific, egregious, loud noise making was my original understanding. And in the read of this bylaw, the service described as a service hereby establishes includes the regulation or prohibition of noises considered objectionable or disturbing in accordance with section of the Local Government Act. So I'm just seeking clarification from staff and the director if he wants to pipe in about, does this actually get at what was intended? And it seems much broader than what was intended. Was there no way of being more specific? Because my experience of noise bylaws when they're broad in the rural areas is that they're just not enforceable and of much good. So I would appreciate any comment on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Anderson. I'll go to Mr. Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as the report states, before the board can enact a noise control bylaw that specifically addresses specific noises, it must establish a service. And what is before the board today is basically a report saying, do you wish to move forward and establish a service? And if the board does that, then, of course, they may look at specific noises, specific remedies, specific decibels, whatever, but that would be a further step beyond establishing the service itself.
Thank you, Mr. Yates.
Thank you.
Okay, good enough, Director Anderson?
Yeah, so I assume that in the bylaw, then we can get into the specifics. Thank you. I missed the distinction.
Okay, thank you. And Director Cornfield.
Yeah, just a question. This comes back, and will there be a section on exemptions?
Mr. Yates, or
Well, I suppose that's up to the board. I mean, I think the impetus of the report was started with the cannons in Area A. And we will see what the appetite from the Area A and the East is in terms of what kind of limitations or what kind of noises are going to be included in the bylaw. So we haven't really had that discussion, but yes, the impetus of it is that the cannons and what similar noise control efforts are we going to try and enforce in Area A?
Okay, and if I can, just as a follow-up, there's a number of fish and game clubs that have shooting ranges that are authorized. And that would be my concern, that all of a sudden, if somebody decides they don't like shooting, what happens to them? So I think that there needs to be exemptions for lawful uses.
And so if I can, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but Director Wally's certainly aware of that, and I think some of the initial discussions were that the distance these noises would be from residential homes. So, for example, if it was a shooting range, I'm not a shooting range person, but I got to assume they're a certain distance from homes, let's say 200 meters or so, and that was really what Director Wally had on mind when he was putting some kind of limitations on noise control, how close it was going to be to residential homes. So if it's something like a shooting range you're concerned about, I'm sure it'll be addressed in that, because it'll be distance from homes.
Okay, and just one last follow-up. I haven't seen the word chivalries in a long time. And for those that are listening in, chivalry is a celebration where you keep the bride and groom up all night, and by beating pots and pans and blowing musical instruments. So I'm not sure that those are used much these days.
Thank you, Director Cornfield. I'm Director Wally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just a question on the way this will play out for staff. So the recommendation here to establish a service, when that comes back on October 26th, will that include a more specific bylaw with it or not?
Go to Mr. Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, that was not the intention. I think, unlike municipalities, regional districts need to borrow authority from their members, and this would be the first step in doing that. And once that is accomplished, then I think the board can turn its attention to specifics in terms of what kinds of noises does the board wish to regulate? Are there exemptions? Are there minimum distances? Are there maximum decibels? All of those issues would be dealt with in a subsequent bylaw, which would not normally come forward at the time the board is thinking of establishing the service.
I see. If I might continue, Mr. Chair, my question, I guess, to be a little more specific, is once there is a noise control service established, in that interim before become more specific, is there anything there that's enforceable, or is it just a preliminary with no bylaws whatsoever?
It's preliminary, so we wouldn't have a bylaw that contains specifics or prohibitions in there. So once we establish the service, as Mr. Yates said, that's part A, and then we'll go look to get in the specifics of the bylaw about what's going to be prohibited.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Director Abram.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to be clear for me, the board, it's at the board level now for noise control service establishment. I assume that it's the board that establishes a service. And then when the bylaw comes back, the bylaw would go to the Electoral Area Services Committee for discussion of all these details that you, or that keep, getting brought up. Is that the correct process?
Mr. Chair, it is. However, this will be a single participant service. So I believe it's going to be a board vote.
Okay.
That's correct. Okay. Joe, I don't see any further hands up. So on receipt, I'll call questions. Anybody opposed? See none carried. And on item B, the bylaw.
I move that a bylaw to establish a noise control service electoral area A be returned for consideration at the October 26, 2022 board meeting.
Wally and Colburn, thank you.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Item 3, Browns Bay Resort, Operation Utilities Request. Motion
Receipt.
Wally.
Second.
Anderson, thank you. And I'll go CO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
On receipt, Call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Item B, the creation of a water and sewer service areas for Browns Bay community be deferred pending resolution of the risk identified in the September 15th, 2022 report from the CEO.
So moved.
Wally
Second,
Second, Abram.
and Abram seconded. Any further discussion? Director Cornfield.
So if it's deferred, do we know where, what time and place?
Was the CEO?
We don't, Mr. Chair. There's a number of things, the risks that we have to examine. We don't know a timeline on that, so we didn't put a deferral date on that. So we don't have a specific date on that, but when we have answers to the risk, we'll certainly bring it back as soon as we can.
Okay, and just to follow up on that one, what risk is there? Like obviously there's a number of people that live out at the resort, and especially during the summertime, how do they dispose of their effluent now, right? The sewer system and the water system as well. Is there any risk to the environment?
I wouldn't say those are the risks we're examining, because those are regulations through VHA or Ministry of Environment. Risks we're looking at, for example, are public access. There isn't currently, it's deemed to be boat access, even though there's a road to Browns Bay. Technically speaking, it's boat access. There's issues with dam safety that we'll be looking at. So not, when we look at a water and sewer system, it needs to meet the regulations of Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Health. So those aren't things that we would
Concern
look.
ourselves?
Yeah, we wouldn't be focusing on not meeting those regulations, but there's some other things that we need to look at in terms of operating the system, and if there isn't access, snow plowing to the road, so on and so forth, then we need to bring those back to the area director and the committee for comment.
Okay, thank you.
Gil? Don't see any further hands up discussion. Call question on the motion. Is anybody opposed? Carried. Item 4, Regional Fire Administration Support Service Study.
Receive the report.
Receive.
Colburn.
Colburn and Wally, and I'll go to the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom will speak to this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is an interim report for the board's information, just to show where we're at with the process of this particular study that the board directed us to do. So as we saw, the consultant that was hired went out and basically talked about this concept with a number of communities, with the fire service, with others who have an interest in it. And the report is attached to the staff report. I think fundamentally what they're saying is there's a lot of support, and so what we need to do as the next step is to bring back to the board some idea of what the cost would be associated with this and exactly what it would look like. So this is really an informational item for the board, showing where we're at with the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. Any questions? Director Abram.
Yes, thank you. I guess I'm not sure it's a question, it's a comment at least. I can certainly see this as being of some benefit to some of the areas, and should be considered, in my opinion, as a sub-regional service, with the areas that want to join being able to join. Area C is not interested in being part of this service. We have a rather unique situation, being that we are a South Quadra Island Fire Improvement District. So our fire department is completely autonomous from the regional district. It's run by a board of trustees. And I saw in the report that, that the fire chief has been spoken to. Well, the fire chief is wonderful fire chief and runs a great department, but she is an employee of the board of trustees. So I think, they're the people that need to be talked to in the future, if there are future communications with the consultant. I can't find a place in this service that would really benefit Area C to any degree. I can certainly see it in other areas, such as the West Coast and other Sayward, et cetera, where you have, standard sort of fire services. But for Area C, I would not be interested in joining a regional service, but I would support there being a sub-regional services where the areas that are interested in joining can join and collaborate in that way. But there should be an opt-out provision, which would be that would be afforded by a sub-regional service. So that would be my opinion on it in moving forward.
Okay, thank you. I've got Director Baker, Colburn, and Wally. Director Baker.
And to Mr. Yates, when you're looking at the cost, you're evaluating what the extra cost is annually as well, correct?
Mr. Yates?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as I mentioned, we haven't really looked in detail at costs and who would be in, who would be out, and what the menu of services might be. That would be the subsequent report that would come before the board. And I think that would be the opportunity for directors who wish to argue, whether they're receiving the full benefit of the service. It really has to be defined in more detail. But this is really just to let the board know there appears to be lots of support, including from Quadra Island, I should mention. And of course, without knowing the details, the board is really not able to come to any conclusions at this point about who should pay what would the total cost be, what would the offerings be through the service. These are all things that would still need to be debated, but not today. That was not the intention today to have an opportunity for the board to talk about the menu of services, if you will.
Yeah, if I may, I wasn't referring to having those costs today. What I was referring to is in the future, we would understand what increases we'd be looking at to support that service.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. And Director Colburn.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very thankful for this report. Its timeliness, considering Village Isabellas' situation, which was mentioned in it. And I think the opportunity for all in the region to have to share best practices, to have an option for bulk buying. I'm really looking forward to seeing what that service menu looks like. So just much appreciation for the staff and their hard work on this. And also thank you to all of the areas and municipalities that did participate. It goes to show the want for something like this, and also I think it'll inform that later report that could give us some options. So many thanks.
Thank you, Director Colburn. And Director Wally.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to give staff a heads up that, as staff already knows, Area A does not have a fire department, and I guess that's the reason why Area A wasn't consulted for this report. But when the Sayward Valley does have a fire department, it'll be run by our own staff, and our own staff doesn't need a regional fire service to function. They don't have services for any of the work that staff does. They don't need them. And all of Area A, except for the Sayward Valley, wouldn't have any interest in financially supporting fire suppression in the Sayward Valley or anywhere else. So there's no way that at this point, as I see it, that Area A would be interested in participating. So I would like to echo Director Abrams' comments in that we won't be a participant in the service either. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands up. So on receipt, I'll call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Item 5, request for financial assistance, Quadra Cat Rescue. Motion to receive the report from the CEO. Abram.
Second.
Second by Wally and the CEO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
On receipt, call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. And item B, the board approve a grant for Quadra Cat Rescue in the amount of $1,500 to assist in the 2022-2023 Quadra Cat Rescue Program. Abram, seconder.
Second Coburn.
Coburn. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. No bylaws, correspondence. We have 3 items. Board's wishes.
The receipt of all three.
Three wants to be polled. Motion for 1 and 2.
So moved.
Director Wally, seconder, Director Cornfield. Any discussion on 1 and 2? Call question. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 3, motion received, BC Housing.
So moved.
Second.
Cornfield and Evans. And I'll go for discussion. Director Cornfield.
I guess I get a little concerned, and I appreciate the work that UBCM is doing on it, where it generally aligns. My concern is where it doesn't align. And to me, what government, or at least Mr. Eby was proposing, goes contrary to a lot of what local governments do. And I think they are way over the line in terms of legislating what we do to manage our communities. And I think this is just the tip of an iceberg. It's the small part of what you see, but it can be awfully big beneath the surface, and that's what causes the problems. So I would really urge UBCM to continue dealing with this, and my request to the board is to follow this one carefully. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Cornfield. Any further discussion? Director Mulgrove.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to respond to Director Cornfield. The main area that I think is of concern, of course, is the usurping of municipal and or regional district jurisdiction and mandate over land use development. I can assure everyone here that UBCM, we are following this very, very closely. There's a lot of discussion back and forth. But I would say that in its entirety, the platform put forward, and I think UBCM has in their press release basically indicated significant support for many of the ideas contained, and many of them are from the UBCM's housing strategy that was released in 2018. It's that area of the the overriding municipal jurisdiction is the key element of that will going forward will be the difficult piece, I think. But yeah, I just wanted to respond. We're cognizant of that issue, and discussions continue. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Director Mulgrove.
One last comment.
One last comment.
And that's just, well, good thing you brought up the study, which was 2018. That's 4 years old. The real estate market has changed really considerably in the last 4 years. And I think it's just something we've got to maybe keep an eye on it. And some of the proposals may be viewed a little differently by different people, which is fine. But I think it's when they cross the line and start getting into our business, that's up to local government to work with. And anytime I see things that are legislating us to do what is our responsibility, they need to go back and look at getting their house in order first. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cornfield. Director Abram.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, we've been asking for a regional district charter for, I don't know, 15 years maybe, since we did the community charter. I was on the community charter council. We completed that, and we were promised at that time by the government that there would be a regional district charter. And in this correspondence from UBCM and Mr. Eby, the Minister Eby, the need for that charter is very obvious because we are crossing lines, as Director Cornfield mentioned. And I know Director Moglove says that UBCM is working on it, but we need to work on it, I believe, at the UBCM level as a priority to not only deal with the individual pieces that are in this new plan, but the overarching look at the regional district legislation. We don't have a charter and we need it. We've been telling UBCM that and the province that for all of those years. And UBCM has had committee after committee after committee to deal with it, but the government has not moved forward and taken the plunge and said, okay, we're going to establish a committee like we did for the community charter and create a regional district charter. So I'd like to impress upon our UBCM representative that that is something that should be talked about in conjunction with this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Abram. I don't see any further hands up. So on receipt to call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Members report, motion, North Vancouver Island Fisheries map. Motion received September 22nd, report from Director Abram.
Move receipt.
Lawley
Abram.
and Abram. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. No management. No new business. No amendments. No closed.
Move termination.
Move termination, Director Adams. Second, Cornfield. Anyone opposed? Carried. Again, everybody, good luck for those running Saturday night. And we do have one meeting on the 26th to conclude this term. See you then.
Yeah, bye everyone. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.
Good luck.